Okay, so in this video we're going to have a look at pivot tables, and we're going to work together on creating a pivot table. So the first thing that you're going to need to do is make a copy of this data. So you'll find the link to the data in the description for the video. So you might want to pause the video now and make a copy of this data before you continue. Okay, so now that you've made a copy of this data, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to tell our spreadsheet that we want to create a pivot table. So to do that, we are going to need to select the data that we want to create a pivot table from. So you can either select certain pieces of data, or you can just go ahead and create a pivot table, and it's going to assume that we want to use all of the data in this particular sheet. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to click on Data and Pivot Table. Now that we've clicked on Data and Pivot Table, it's going to ask us what data we want to use. So I am going to now choose this data here, which is what it's suggesting. So this is what I said before. It's going to ask it, it's going to assume we want to use all the data. So now we're going to click here. Okay, so again, I suggest that you pause this for a second and get to this step. So we went to Data, Pivot Table, and we use the suggested range. So pause. Okay, so now that you've got this data here, we're going to click OK. And we are going to choose to make this in a new sheet, and we're going to click the Create button. Okay. So pause again and get to the point where you have this view showing, and then you can click play again. Okay, so now that we have told our sheet that we want to create a pivot table, it opens up the pivot table editor. And the pivot table editor has rows, columns, values, and filters. So filters work exactly the same way as they would do in a spreadsheet. So a regular spreadsheet filter, we can have the same thing here in a pivot table. The rows are the values that we want to appear down the side here. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to choose first name, and we are going to add last name. And now we can see the first name and the last name next to it. So we are now going to uncheck the Show Totals boxes next to both of these, and you'll see we just have a list of first names and last names. So we clicked on Add, we chose first name, we clicked on Add, we chose last name, pause the video, do the same thing for yourself, and then click Play. Okay, so now that we've got our data looking like this, we're going to want to add in something that allows us to start grouping our students together. So to do this, what we're going to do is we're going to add our grade level box. Now you can see that by adding the grade level in here, we now have another set of data, which is the grade level. So I can again untick Show Totals. But where the magic happens is when I take this and I drag it to the top. And what you'll see now is because I've put something that we can group all of our students by, so that's the grade level, grade 7, I can now collapse all the grade 7s down. And I can collapse all the grade 8s down, and all the grade 9s, and all the grade 10s, and all the grade 11s. So what the pivot table is doing for me is it's taking my data and it's grouping by information that might be useful. I can then add in my target grade column too. So I can show the target grade for each of the grade 7s. Okay, so I'm going to remove my target grade, I'm going to remove my grade level, and I'm going to show you once more how I did this. So I'm going to click on Add, and I'm going to choose grade level. Now because grade level is what I want to group by, I'm going to take it, and I'm going to drag it, click and drag to the top and let go. And my spreadsheet's automatically going to do the magic for me. So go ahead now, add the grade level, drag it to the top, and get your sheet to look the same as mine. So click pause. Okay, so now that you have your spreadsheet looking like this, we can do a few things here. We can choose whether we want ascending or descending order. We can repeat row labels if we want to. That's handy if you have massive amounts of data. We can also add values in. These aren't very useful. If I add in target values, I can choose to have an average, for example. This would be good if I had multiple values. We don't have that. So this is the basic pivot table. What we've got is we've created a table that groups a data by grade level. It shows the first name and last name. If we wanted to, we could also show the email address of the student, and allows us to see that in a nice, easy way. So if we want to get back to our data that we were originally using, we can click back down here on our pivot table data. And we could go ahead and we could create a new pivot table if we wanted to. And then you could have a pivot table for homerooms. You could have a pivot table for students who are achieving a particular grade. So you can keep making these pivot tables and they will appear at the bottom. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to quickly go back through this. If you already fully get what's happening here, you can close the video at this point. But just in case you want to explain one more time. So we're going to go to Data and Pivot Table. We are going to click on the little window button here. We're going to choose the suggested data. We're going to create a new sheet. We are going to add our grade level. We are going to add our first name. We are going to add our last name. And we are going to uncheck the show totals. And now we have a table in which we can filter and organize our data. So that's how to create and use a very basic pivot table in Google Sheets.